2:13 a.m., the 3rd of March, 1961, Cellblock C mail corridor, Graystone State Penitentiary, upstate, where the air always smells like bleach and wet concrete. A guard's flashlight cut the dark into thin slices. Then, the beam stopped on a canvas mail sack, and the man holding it, Officer Lennox Pryce, smiled like he'd found money that didn't belong to anybody. He reached in, slow, and pulled out a stack of letters tied with twine. Not contraband, not cash, not a blade. Just paper, and in this place, paper was power. Freeze that, because Pryce didn't open those letters like a man curious. He opened them like a man claiming territory. He read the top line of the first page, licked his thumb. Always licked his thumb, that was his tell, and chuckled under his breath. "Mr. Johnson," he whispered to the empty corridor, like he was practicing the taste of the name. "Let's see who loves you." But that wasn't the end, because 2 days later, the same guard would be begging to be transferred off the block, and the scariest part, Bumpy Johnson never touched him. Not once, in our telling. Graystone wasn't just a prison. It was a small city built out of locks and routine. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. Metal doors that slammed like punctuation. Men trading favors the way other men trade cigarettes. And Bumpy, sitting on a thin mattress that always smelled faintly of disinfectant, didn't run it with fists. He ran it with access. Who got seen, who got heard, who got paperwork pushed forward instead of lost. Because the city doesn't run on rules. It runs on favors. Bumpy's real currency wasn't violence. It was certainty. It was relationships outside these walls. It was the invisible pressure that could make a warden's phone ring at the wrong time. And that's why Pryce stealing letters wasn't petty. It was a declaration. The villains lined up clean in this story. The institutional face was Warden Alton Grieg, pressed uniform, polite smile, eyes like filing cabinets. His tell was a gold pen he clicked twice before he lied, and the phrase he used for everything. Standard protocol. Grieg would say, like protocol was God. The shadow behind the scenes was a political handler named Warren Lasker, never seen in the yard, never sweating. Always smelling like aftershave and office paper. His tell was the way he adjusted his tie knot mid-sentence, even when it was already perfect. "Let's keep this civilized," Lasker would purr. And the on-scene enforcer, the muscle with the keys, was Officer Lennox Pryce. Thumb lick, slow grin, and the phrase he loved to murmur when a man had no good options. "Don't make me write you up." Little Leon Vega, his runner on the outside, quick with a message and quicker with excuses. Renee Wren Sykes, a jailhouse lawyer with sharp eyes and a sharper pencil. She spoke like every word cost money. And Eddie Glass, former cop turned contact, the one who knew how institutions moved when they got scared. They were Bumpy's hands without being his fists. And the injustice that lit the fuse was simple. In Graystone, mail wasn't just mail. Mail was a lifeline. It was court updates, family money orders, a dying aunt's last words, a lawyer's warning, a journalist's questions, a union rep's promise. And then Pryce decided it was leverage. When Bumpy first noticed, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, a week of silence from Leon when Leon was never silent. A promised legal notice that never arrived. A visitor list misfiled. And men around Bumpy started getting that look. The look that says the system is squeezing you and nobody will admit it. One afternoon in the day room, Bumpy watched Pryce stroll past the tables with the mail sack hanging heavy from his shoulder, like Santa in a place that didn't deserve gifts. Pryce's thumb licked, his grin spread. He paused at Bumpy's table. "Johnson," Pryce said. Bumpy didn't look up from his book. Pryce leaned in, soft enough that it felt personal. "You got a lot of people writing you." Bumpy turned one page. "That's so." Pryce chuckled. "I read pretty good." Wren Sykes' pencil stopped moving. Bumpy finally lifted his eyes, calm as a still lake. "You ever hear a proverb, officer?" Bumpy asked. Pryce's grin tightened. "I hear a lot of things." Bumpy's voice stayed low. "A man who steals mail is borrowing a storm." Pryce blinked once, then smiled again like he couldn't afford to understand. "Don't make me write you up," he murmured. Bumpy nodded polite. "Do what you gotta do." Pryce walked off, whistling a hymn that sounded wrong in his mouth. Wren leaned in. "He's fishing," she whispered. "He wants you to jump." Bumpy didn't blink. He already jumped. Wren frowned. "What you mean?" Bumpy closed the book with care. And then he made the promise. Clean. Simple. With a clock attached. 48 hours, Bumpy said. Wren's eyes narrowed. 48 for what? Bumpy's gaze went past her, through the bars, through the building, like he was looking at a man in an office miles away. "For him to learn," Bumpy said. "That paper can kill you in this town." Hortu, Leon was in a phone booth in Harlem, coins clinking, rain tapping the glass like impatient fingers. Daddy Glass stood beside him, collar up, watching the street. Leon spoke fast. "Bumpy says 48 hours. Eddie's jaw tightened. "I know what that means." Leon swallowed, guards taking letters, reading them. Eddie looked away, then back like he hated what he already knew. "Mailroom touches paper," Eddie said. "Paper touches files, files touch judges, judges touch wardens." Leon frowned. "That's a lot of touching." Eddie's voice went flat. "That's how systems work. They pretend they're clean while they pass dirt hand to hand." Leon glanced down the block. "What do we do?" Eddie exhaled slow. "We don't threaten. We prove." Har 9. Back in Graystone, Pryce made his second mistake. He didn't just steal, he performed. In the corridor outside Bumpy's cell. Pryce stopped, leaned close to the bars, and held up a letter like it was a photograph. "Nice handwriting," Pryce said. "Thumb lick grin, lady friend." Bumpy sat on the edge of his mattress, hands relaxed. "That letter ain't yours," Bumpy said. Pryce shrugged. "Mail gets inspected." Bumpy's voice stayed gentle. "Inspected. Don't mean pocketed." Pryce's grin widened. "Standard protocol." Behind Pryce, Warden Grieg's phrase echoed like a blessing. Bumpy's eyes flicked to the name on Pryce's badge. "Lennox," Bumpy said, like he was trying it on. "You ever been to a barber shop in Harlem?" Pryce snorted. "I cut my own hair." Bumpy nodded once. "That explains the choices." A couple of men down the corridor stifled laughter. Pryce's grin slipped for half a second, and that half-second mattered. Because men like Pryce didn't steal letters for money, they stole them for respect. And respect doesn't like to be laughed at. Pryce leaned in, voice low, angry now. "I can make your days longer," he hissed. Bumpy didn't rise to it. He just tilted his head. "In a cage, the loudest key ain't always the one that opens the door," Bumpy said softly. Pryce blinked, confused, and walked away like confusion was an insult. Poor 18. Wren Sykes met Bumpy at the library table, old books smelling like mildew and surrender. She slid a scrap of paper across to him. Just a few words. "You can get it?" Wren hesitated. Just a beat too long, and Bumpy saw it. Fear wearing a mask. Wren lowered her voice. "Pryce's got friends. Warden's got friends. And I got a deal on the table." Bumpy's eyes didn't change, but the air did. "What kind of deal?" he asked. Wren's throat bobbed. "They said, if I keep my head down, they'll move my hearing up." Bumpy nodded slowly. That was the fracture, the almost betrayal, not because Wren was evil, because survival makes everybody negotiate with their own conscience. Wren's voice cracked. "I'm tired, Bumpy." Bumpy leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low enough to feel like a secret. "Wren," he said, "you can take the deal. I won't curse you. Wren stared at him, relieved and ashamed at the same time. Bumpy continued, quieter now, but understand something. If you trade your spine for a date on a calendar, they'll own your posture forever. Darren's eyes watered, angry. So what? I'm supposed to be a martyr. Bumpy shook his head. He tapped the table once. A deal from a bully is just rent for your courage, he said. Wren inhaled. Hard. Then she pushed the scrap back toward him. All right, she whispered. No deal. Bumpy nodded once. Good. Wren's jaw tightened. But I'm not doing this for free. Bumpy's mouth twitched. Nobody does. Her 31. The proof object came from a place nobody respected until they needed it. The switchboard room, a little office with a gray phone console, the smell of hot dust, and a bored clerk who lived on coffee and habit. Wren didn't break in. She didn't do anything cinematic. She did something more dangerous, she asked. She leaned on routine. She found a moment when the clerk was tired enough to be careless and proud enough to feel important. Hey, Wren said, voice casual. I need to check a call time for my appeal. The clerk sighed, like she hated everyone equally. Name. Wren gave a name that wasn't hers. The clerk reached for a binder. Thick, ugly, official carbon copy call logs. And there it was, page after page of who called who, when, and how long the line stayed alive, stamped in the corner in red. CENSOR'S EYE. That stamp was the memory hook. It meant somebody had touched it. Somebody had watched it. Wren's fingers hovered, and then the first complication hit. A shadow moved in the doorway. Officer Pryce thumb lick. Slow grin. What you doing in here? Pryce asked. Wren didn't look up. Paperwork. Pryce chuckled. Paperwork's my favorite. The clerk glanced up. Nervous. She's just... Pryce cut her off with a hand. Standard protocol. Wren's pulse thumped, but her face stayed bored. Pryce stepped closer. Let me see. Wren slid the binder shut. Too quick, Pryce's grin sharpened. You hiding something, Wren? Wren shrugged. You're the one who likes reading other people's mail. The clerk froze, like she'd heard something forbidden. Pryce's eyes narrowed. Careful. Wren lifted a pen and tapped the stamp on the corner of the page, right on CENSOR'S EYE. Careful, Wren echoed back. Pryce reached for the binder. And complication 2, hit a sudden shout from the hall. Another officer calling Pryce's name. Pryce, warden needs you, now. Pryce's grin didn't move, but his eyes did. Irritation, because being summoned means you're not in control. He leaned in close to Wren, voice like a threat wrapped in a whisper. You touch that log, he said, thumblick, and I'll make your life paperwork. Wren held his gaze steady. Paper cuts, she said softly. Pryce paused, just long enough to be human, then walked out. The clerk exhaled shakily. What was that about? Wren didn't answer. She tore the carbon copy cleanly, except it didn't tear clean. A corner ripped off. Taking a name with it, Wren's stomach dropped. She folded what she had anyway and slipped it into her waistband like it was warmth. And when she left the switchboard room, she could feel eyes behind her. A tail, Whore 44. Bumpy sat in his cell. The corridor quiet except for distant keys, and the occasional cough that sounded like old regret. Wren slid the torn carbon copy page through the bars. The red CENSOR'S EYE stamp bled through the paper like a bruise. Bumpy didn't rush it. He smoothed the page flat, like it deserved respect. Leon's name was on it. Outside calls Eddie's name, through a contact line. And then, clear as daylight in a dark place, a call from Warden Grieg's office to Warren Lasker's private number. 10 minutes long, right after Pryce started inspecting Bumpy's mail. The missing corner mattered, but not enough to save them. Wren whispered, That's the chain. Bumpy nodded. That's the spine. Wren licked her lips. They'll say it's fake. Bumpy's eyes stayed calm. Then they'll have to explain the stamp. Wren's voice dropped. What do you do now? Bumpy folded the page once. Not dramatic, not triumphant, just certain. We put it in the only place they can't ignore, Bumpy said. Wren frowned. Where's that? Bumpy's gaze lifted toward the ceiling, like he was listening to a different kind of noise. Where shame lives, he said. Behind a desk. Har 47. The quietly menacing confrontation came in the corridor. No audience, no theater. He held a letter up between two fingers. Thumb lick? Your mother got pretty words, Pryce said. Makes a man sentimental. Bumpy's eyes flicked to the letter, then back to Pryce. You read it? Bumpy asked. Pryce grinned. Maybe. Bumpy's voice stayed soft. You know what your mistake is, Lennox. Pryce chuckled. Thinking you matter. Bumpy shook his head slowly. Thinking your uniform makes you invisible, Bumpy said. Pryce's grin wavered. Bumpy leaned closer to the bars. Not loud, not angry. Slower, meaner. In 48 hours, Bumpy said. You're going to ask a man who doesn't like you to save you. Pryce's eyes hardened. From who? Bumpy's gaze didn't move. From your own choices, he said. Pryce swallowed, then forced the grin back onto his face like armor. You don't scare me, Pryce muttered. Bumpy nodded once. Good, he said. Fear makes men sloppy. Pryce walked away, but his whistle didn't come back. Her 48. Warden Grieg's office smelled like furniture polish and old authority, a flag in the corner, a framed certificate on the wall, a window that looked out at razor wire like it was scenery. Warden Grieg sat behind his desk, gold pen in hand. Click, standard protocol, he said before anyone even spoke. Beside him stood Warren Lasker. Tie knot perfect, fingers adjusting it anyway. Bumpy was brought in calm, wrists cuffed, posture unbent. Wren sat to one side, legal pad ready. Eddie wasn't there in person, but his presence lived in the paper. Warden Grieg smiled like he was doing Bumpy a favor by listening. Mr. Johnson, Grieg said, clicking his pen twice. I'm told you have concerns about mail handling. Bumpy nodded. I do. Grieg leaned back. Mail is inspected for safety. Inspected, Bumpy repeated softly. Not collected. Lasker smiled thin. You're making allegations. Wren's pencil scratched once. He's making observations. Pryce shifted. Thumb to mouth, lick. Too fast this time. Warden Grieg's voice stayed smooth. Standard protocol, he repeated. Freeze that, because this is the moment that becomes the legend clip. Not a punch, not a riot. A piece of paper changing the temperature in the room. Bumpy reached out with his cuffed hands and placed the torn carbon copy page on the desk. The red CENSOR'S EYE stamp faced up, mechanically undeniable. Warden Grieg's coffee mug, cream-colored with a chipped rim, tilted as his hand jerked. Coffee spilled onto his blotter, bleeding into the leather like a bruise. His gold pen clicked wrong and skittered off the desk, clattering on the floor. Lasker's tie, adjusting hand, froze mid-knot. Officer Pryce stopped licking his thumb. Silence pressed down, heavy as a cell door. Bumpy didn't give a speech, he gave a few lines. That's your office calling his number, Bumpy said quietly. Wren tapped the stamp with her pencil tip. And that stamp says it came through official hands. Lasker's voice tightened. That proves nothing. Bumpy's eyes stayed calm. It proves you touched my life with paperwork. Warden Grieg swallowed, staring at the page like it could bite. Pryce finally spoke, voice smaller than it had ever been. Warden, he started. Grieg snapped his eyes up. Don't! Lasker cleared his throat, trying to put civilization back on the table. Let's keep this civilized, he said again. but now it sounded like begging. Wren leaned forward, sharp. Civilized is not stealing mail. Civilized is not retaliating with holds. Grieg's jaw flexed. "You're accusing my staff," Bumpy interrupted softly. "No," Bumpy said. "I'm describing them." Warden Grieg reached for the page. Bumpy's cuffed hands didn't move fast. They moved certain. He slid the page back an inch, not touching Grieg, not threatening, just controlling distance. And in that inch was the whole war. Grieg stared at him. Bumpy's voice went slower. "Meaner, Warden," he said. "If you bury this, it comes back up with your name on it." Lasker's eyes flashed. "Are you threatening?" Bumpy looked at him like he was a receipt. "Paper don't need threats," Bumpy said. "Paper needs readers." Warden Grieg exhaled, eyes darting to Pryce like Pryce was suddenly a liability he couldn't afford. Grieg set his jaw. "Standard protocol," he began. Wren cut him off. "Standard protocol, just spilled coffee, sir." Grieg's lips twitched, anger and fear mixing into something ugly. Then he did what institutions always do when they can't win on truth. He tried to win on process. "This document is incomplete," Grieg said. "A corner is missing." Wren nodded. "So is your credibility." And then the institution yielded, only because it had to, because outside, Leon and Eddie had already begun making phones. Ring, not threats. Pressure. A union rep wanting to know why the mailroom was. Adjusting correspondence. A journalist asking for comment on CENSOR'S EYE stamps and private numbers. A lawyer requesting records. Corroboration, public pressure, leverage. Grieg stared at Pryce a long moment. Pryce's thumb hovered near his mouth, but he didn't lick it this time. He looked like a man who suddenly understood storms. "I want a transfer," Pryce blurted, voice cracking. "I want off this block." Lasker snapped his head toward him. "Shut up." Pryce didn't. "I want out." Freeze that, because the room heard it for what it was, not a request. A confession of fear. Warden Grieg's gold pen lay on the floor like a fallen crown. He looked at Pryce, then at Bumpy, then at the page again. Grieg's voice came out tight. "Transfer approved," he said. Lasker's tie hand finally moved, but it was shaking now, adjusting a knot that couldn't fix what just happened. "And Bumpy." Bumpy didn't smile. He simply nodded once, like a man watching a predictable machine finally do what it was designed to do when it got caught. Consequences didn't fall from the sky. They arrived on forms. Pryce got his transfer, yes, but not to somewhere comfortable. He got moved to a unit where nobody cared about his grin and everybody watched his hands. His reputation traveled faster than he did. Warden Grieg kept his job, but he lost something more valuable than pride. He lost quiet. Every decision after that came with eyes on it. Audits, questions, just checking. The kind of scrutiny that makes a man age in his jaw, Lasker. The shadow villain didn't get arrested. He got denied. Doors that used to open stopped opening. Calls that used to get answered rang out into dead air. His tie stayed perfect, but the city around him stopped acting impressed. And Bumpy's team paid a cost because they always do. 2 nights after the transfer, Graystone ran a random shakedown on Cellblock C. Bumpy's mattress got cut open. Wren's legal papers got scattered like trash. The commissary list got delayed by mistake. Leon's name was suddenly not on the approved callers lists for a week. Eddie got a friendly visit from a man who didn't show a badge but talked like he owned one. That's the price of leverage. And still, the letters started arriving again. Not all at once. Not with celebration. Just back to normal. Which, in a place built to deny you normal, feels like winning. Wren sat with Bumpy in the day room, pencil tapping, eyes tired. "You didn't hurt him," she said. Bumpy looked at the chessboard like it was a map. "I didn't have to," he replied. Wren's voice was quiet. You ever feel bad? Bumpy's eyes lifted. Steady bad, he repeated. For what? For making a thief stop stealing? Wren exhaled. For making a man afraid. Bumpy leaned back, listening to the fluorescent buzz like it had answers. Then he said it, plain, morally messy, true in the way prisons teach you truth. I didn't make him afraid, Bumpy said. I reminded him he was mortal. A street proverb drifted through the block like smoke. A bully don't fear a blade. He fears a witness. Another one, sharper. When a man plays with your mail, he's really playing with your name. And the one that stuck, the one men repeated under their breath when the lights went out. In a cage, the strongest chain is the one nobody sees. Bumpy looked at Wren one more time. Justice and revenge, he said softly. They look the same in bad lighting. Wren nodded, swallowing the weight of it. Bumpy's voice went low. Final, here's the moral, he said, and it landed like a stamp. Paper doesn't bleed, but it can still end you. And the people who weaponize it always forget one thing. Paper can be turned. So if you felt that moment in the warden's office, the coffee spill, the pen hitting the floor, the guard begging to vanish, hit the like button like you're sealing it in red. Subscribe if you want more street. Legend stories where power flips without a punch. And tell me in the comments, was Bumpy restoring balance, or was he teaching the system a new kind of fear? Next story, listen close, because we're going back to Harlem, where a charity raffle ticket becomes a death sentence on paper, and the only way out is a signature nobody can explain.